Tom.
Hi there, Dan. You completely caught me by surprise.
I do apologise.
I was not expecting you at all. What can I do for you?
So I was wondering what the frisbee is going on with guitar backs.
Guitar backs. Well, that is a very big question. One of the biggest questions in Lutherie and indeed in life. So the back. Okay. So the back is the secondary kind of vibrational plate. It's an active part of the vibrational system of the acoustic guitar. You can feel the back vibrating when you play the guitar, and you can certainly hear the effect of dampening out the back if you strum the guitar and then hold it against your tummy. You can notice how it changes the sound of the guitar. So with that in mind, it's really important to pay attention to it. And I should just preface what I'm about to go into by saying that this is how I think about the acoustic guitar, using various analogies, and it's kind of predominantly based on the things that I learned from Irvin Samoji during my apprenticeship, and a distillation of those ideas combined with my empirical experience of building for the last few years. So the back. It's doing, for me, it does two things when it comes to experiencing the acoustic guitar as a whole. You know, quite often people will choose very beautiful pieces of wood, such as this, very aesthetically pleasing. This is some Tasmanian blackwood. So as part of the kind of holistic experience of the guitar, the aesthetics of the back are obviously important, otherwise we wouldn't choose pieces of wood like this. That isn't to say that this piece of wood doesn't have its own inherent musicality and its own flavour that it adds to the sound of an acoustic guitar. So when it comes to choosing material, obviously I want something that looks very beautiful, but I'm also going to take into account its mass, its density, its longitudinal stiffness, its cross-grain stiffness, and its stiffness along its length. Different woods have very different mechanical properties, and they also affect sound in very different ways. So, for example, we have two extremes here. We have some Brazilian rosewood. This is going into a guitar next year for David. This is commonly regarded as commonly thought of as the king of tone wood. It has a bell-like tap tone, and it's very beautiful. And then we have something completely, like I say, at the opposite end of the spectrum. This is some quilted sapele, immensely beautiful, lots of gorgeous figure, but structurally it's completely different. Doesn't really have much of a tap tone as a function of just the way the grain is orientated to produce this figure. So, as I was saying, the back is like the secondary vibrating plate. I think of it almost like when you're singing in the shower, or when you are practicing your falsetto in the bathroom mirror. You'll notice that the sound, it sounds different depending on the kind of surface that you're singing against. If you're singing up against a tiled surface, it's going to sound very different to if you're screaming into your pillow late at night for whatever reason. But the tiled surface is going to reflect that sound. It's going to bounce it straight back at you, whereas something soft like a pillow is going to absorb the sound. And it's a very similar idea with the back of a guitar. Some woods are going to act more as reflectors. They're going to kind of bounce that sound around. And other types of wood are going to want to absorb that energy. They're not going to want to bounce it around quite so much. So, in terms of how I go about, I think about voicing a back, and I use the word voicing quite loosely. in a similar way to how I think about the soundboard. So obviously we've got braces here, and people brace their backs in very different ways, much in the same way as people brace their soundboards in different ways. Here, this is for a Model S guitar. So I've assessed the stiffness along the grain. I've assessed the stiffness across the grain, and then I'm considering the size of the instrument, and I'm arranging my braces with that in mind. So I want a back that is active, that is allowed to freely move, and it's able to vibrate and contribute something to the system of the guitar. But obviously I need to think about structure, and I don't want a back to be too weak that it runs the risk of cracking or collapsing. And I also don't want it to be too floppy that it's just it's going to absorb all of that energy that's happening inside the soundbox. Making sense so far?
Absolutely, yeah, definitely.
So for example, in this instance, I've got my 3 braces, and they're all full height at the moment, but I will take my chisel and start to shape the braces in this kind of orientation. And a lot of the work that I do is based on feel and just experience. So I'll start to flex the back until it, I realise this might not be particularly helpful, but until it feels right to me. So to me, I want the back to have some give to it, but I want to feel like there's some structure being retained there as well. This is using this kind of ladder braced system. This is how we used to do it at Irvin's. I've seen luthiers brace their backs with X's. I've seen luthiers use like a star arrangement, and all these different type of bracing patterns are to encourage the back to perform or respond in a particular way to that column of air moving inside the guitar. My kind of feeling in terms of shaping the braces is I want to kind of even out the cross grain movement. I want like even stiffness across the plate. So I kind of shape my braces in kind of a pyramid kind of arrangement. So we've got a peak in the middle and then a gradual taper down to almost nothing where it tucks into the linings. Some people do something more curved like this. This is how we used to do them at Irvin's. That's fine too. To me, I prefer to have a point in the middle, to have that kind of pyramid. It just makes more sense to me. Some people have a brace going this way, a floating brace. They want to kind of unify the entire back. You know, the back is still something that I'm very much figuring out. And it's a really, really interesting topic. It's an interesting area. Does that answer your question? That was quite a ramble.
Yeah, more or less, I would say. I was going to ask a follow-up question.
Go ahead.
Is the more rounded shape, is that more of a traditional sort of back brace, or is it all up to the bracing?
Well, I think, quite often, I don't think people always pay that much attention to the back. And quite often the back will just be scalloped at the ends to then be tucked underneath the lining, and then it'll just be kind of straight across.
Okay, yeah.
So you've got an even stiffness, well, you've got essentially more stiffness here, closer to the linings, and proportionally less stiffness here, where it's right in the middle of the plate. What I'm trying to achieve here is that you've got as much stiffness in the middle of the plate as you have right here at the end. So you've got a brace that tapers away to almost nothing, because the stiffness of the plate is increased as a function of its proximity to the rim.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yeah, and that spreads the vibrations better.
Not necessarily spreads the vibrations, but it, in my experience and the way that I think about it, it allows the plate to move in an even way, because the stiffness is more uniform across the grain.
Okay, cool. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.